From beautiful Phoenix, Arizona, it is the Neglected News Report. I'm your co-host Scott, along with my brother Kevin.
Good evening, fellow Patriots. Oh, I said it, Patriots. I blew your cover, but you know what? It's well within your I said Constitution. I'm gonna have the IRS knocking on my door.
And we're to get into a lot of that Constitution and IRS tonight. We've got a lot to cover, guys. A whole lot.
We're going to be fighting the two-headed monster that Obama's got in his hands, both Benghazi and the IRS.
And wait, it grew a third head.
Uh-oh. Tapping the AP.
That's right. Let's get started. Well, it's been an eventful week.
Yes, it has.
Since we last spoke. The last few days especially.
Actually, weekend.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, they always release a lot of this stuff on Friday to bury it so that no one pays attention, but it's gotten a lot of attention on the talk shows this weekend.
Yep, the IRS scandal that broke on Friday. Actually, we all knew about it for months and months and months if your ears and eyes have been open, but they dumped it on Friday because the heat on Benghazi was really picking up.
And of course, Benghazi, the spin on Benghazi is just ridiculous. Let's start off real quick with the spin on Benghazi, I think. Real quick. It's an article out of the New Yorker from, what the hell was the date? What the heck is it? I'm not sure. Anyway, all I know is it's got a large picture of Jay Carney. You know, Jay Carney reminds me of the bratty kid in high school you just want to slap.
He has he has an appropriate name, Carney.
Doesn't he kind of remind you of Brian Barthel when he was little?
People don't know him.
I know, but doesn't he?
Whenever I think of Carney, I think of the Austin Powers movie. That Carney had small hands, smells like cabbage.
I gotta watch that. I forget what that is. Anyway, this is just a short article. It's a cliche, of course, but it really is true. In Washington, every scandal has a crime and a cover-up. Go back to Watergate if you doubt that. And Iran-Contra with Reagan and the Monica Lewinsky and everything. Anyway, with Clinton. The ongoing debate about the attack on the United States facility in Benghazi, where 4 Americans were killed, and the Obama administration's response to it is no exception. For a long time, it seemed like the idea of a cover-up was just a Republican obsession, but now there is something to it. On Friday, ABC News' Jonathan Karl revealed the details of the editing process for the CIA's talking points about the attack, including the edits themselves and some of the reasons the State Department spokeswoman gave for requesting those edits. It's striking to see the 12 different iterations that the talking points went through before they were released to Congress and to United States Ambassador Susan Rice, who used them in Sunday show appearances that became a central focus of Republicans' criticism of the administration's public response to the attacks. Over the course of about 24 hours, the remarks evolved from something specific and fairly detailed into a bland, vague mush. From the very beginning of the editing process, the talking points contained the erroneous assertion that the attack was spontaneously inspired by the protests at the U.S. Embassy in Cairo and evolved. You going to say something?
No.
Okay. That's an important fact because the right has always criticized the administration based on the suggestion that the CIA and the State Department, contrary to what they said, knew that the attack was not spontaneous and not an outgrowth of a demonstration. But everything else about the changes that were made is problematic. The initial draft revealed by Karl mentions at least 5 other attacks against foreign interests in Benghazi before the one in which 4 Americans were killed. Not to mention earlier in the year the attack on the British. Was it the British ambassador in his car?
Not sure.
I don't remember it all, but they had stuff going back to like April, May, and June of that year.
Well, Libya's not a really friendly place.
That's right. That's not in the final version, nor is this. And this is a quote, "We do know that Islamic extremists with ties to the Al-Qaeda participated in the attack. That was replaced by the more tepid, there are indications that extremists participated in the violent demonstrations. Even if we accept the argument that state wanted to be sure that extremists were involved and that they could be linked to Al-Qaeda before saying so with any level of certainty, which is reasonable and supported by evidence from Karl's reporting, that doesn't fully explain these charge changes away. Democrats will argue that the editing process wasn't motivated by a desire to protect Obama's record on fighting Al-Qaeda in the run-up to the 2012 election. They have a point. Based on what we've seen from Carl's report, the process that went into creating and then changing the talking points seems to have been driven in large measure by two parts of the government, CIA and state, trying to make sure that the blame for the attacks and the failure to protect American personnel in Benghazi fell on the other guy. But a point has to be made. Although, wait a minute. Okay. Although the Democrats may have a point that the Republicans, wanted to
use it for political
purposes, that doesn't mean that the CIA and state didn't do something that was wrong. But Obama probably took advantage of it.
Well, what's happened is people are only getting on this story now after the testimony last week. All this stuff was there for everybody to see prior to that. I mean, come
that's
on,
old news.
How ludicrous is it to come out and blame all this, the murder, the desecration of the ambassador's body, dragging through the streets, and some even say sodomy of this man's corpse. I mean, and blaming it on a video, that makes no sense. Any reporter, any politician, anybody who was interested in the truth could look at that and just go, that's a bunch of Bravo Sierra. That's BS.
I got it. But the mere existence of the edits, whatever the motivation for them, seriously undermines the White House's credibility on this issue. This past November, after Election Day, White House Press Secretary Jay Carney told reporters that the White House and the State Department have made clear that the single adjustment that was made to those talking points by either of those two institutions were changing the word consulate to diplomatic facility.
It was a safe house.
Because consulate was inaccurate. Remarkably, Carney is sticking with the line even now. In his regular press briefing on Friday afternoon, a briefing that was delayed several times, presumably in part so the White House could get its spin in order, but also so that it could hold a secretive pre-briefing briefing with select members of the White House press corps, he said, quote, "The only edit made by the White House or the State Department to those talking points generated by the CIA was a change from referring to the facility that was attacked in Benghazi from consulate, because it was not a consulate, to diplomatic post. It was a matter of non-substantive factual correction. But there was a process leading up to that involved inputs from a lot of agencies, as is always the case in a situation like this and is always appropriate. This is an incredible thing for Carney to say. He's playing semantic games, telling a room full of journalists that the definition of editing we've all been using is wrong, that the only thing that matters is who's actually working the keyboard. It's not quite redefining the word is or the phrase sexual relations, but it's not all that far off either." It's kind of like I had it in my head as I was reading this and I forgot it. It's kind of like, instead of calling them illegal aliens, it's undocumented workers. It's all newspeak, 1984 stuff.
Yeah, it's to obscure meaning, and which leads into the next my little bit of work I did today. Now that Geraldo Rivera is in the game, this must really be a real story now. The liberals are starting to for fear of being overtaken, having a story overtake them by having the conservative or the new media, the only ones reporting this, have suddenly realized that they better get on the stick because this is a real story. Geraldo Rivera on Fox News today said, "My sources tell me Benghazi was about running missiles to Syrian rebels." Oh, boy. Glenn Beck said that back in, I want to say, October of 2012, and was regarded as a Looney Tune conspiratorialist.
I actually think he said it within a week of...
It was really soon.
It was like within a week of September 12th or 11th.
So Geraldo said Friday that his sources tell him the U.S. was involved in a secret mission in Libya to arm the Syrian rebels, which was the reason for the initial secrecy about the attack in Benghazi. For all of us that have been awake this whole time, this is like telling us 2 and 2 equals 4, something we learned in first grade. I mean, we've known all of this. We've been trying to tell the media this.
I mean, okay, when we say we know it, we don't have proof necessarily. But as the story has evolved, it's like you got to scratch your head and say, huh? This doesn't make sense.
Yeah, but now that it's broken by Geraldo, it's real news, right? He says he said on Fox and Friends that the Republican presidential nominee Mitt Romney may have been briefed by then CIA Director David Petraeus to suggest that there was a secret mission going on there, that we can't go there, we can't talk about it. I believe, Geraldo goes on to say, and my sources tell me, they were there to round up those shoulder-fired surface-air missiles. They were going to hand those missiles over to the Turks, and the Turks were going to give them to the rebels in Syria. When they say rebels, they mean the Muslim Brotherhood is what they're talking about, or the Taliban, or the Al-Qaeda, either one.
And the thing real quick, for 2 points. Number one, giving arms to them is against international law. Number two,
it is. And the Russians are not going to take too kindly.
Yeah, the Russians are well. Between that and our support of Monsanto and that other what's the other company I forget, Sinner or whatever. They say that's grounds for a world war. But anyway, that's not because you're screwing with the food supply. But what I was going to say was, they call them rebels. Have we not learned our lessons over the years? We supported the Shah of Iran when he came to power. We picked a side. Look what happened with that. We supported Hosni Mubarak in Egypt after Sadat was assassinated. Look what came of that. We supported Saddam Hussein. Before he was our enemy, he was our friend.
Speaking of those rebels, I don't know if I'm afraid to look at it. There's a YouTube video out there, and it's been on. It was on Drudge Report earlier today, and a couple other news repositories. Apparently, it shows these rebels are basically Muslim Brotherhood at least and Al-Qaeda at worst. And it shows one of their leaders taking the corpse of a not murdered, but a Syrian soldier that had been killed in battle, and literally opening up his chest, pulling his heart out, and taking a bite out of it. Well,
man,
you weren't aware of that either, were you?
I haven't heard about that.
It said, because he had said earlier in the week that we will eat your hearts. But anyway, that's a viral. I don't know if it's viral. I don't know who's got the heart. No pun intended. To watch it, but apparently that it's so.
Last time that happened was with the Mayans, 500 years ago.
Yeah, but. Going back to this Benghazi thing, why would anybody find this strange that our government would be running guns? Haven't we done that before?
Iran-Contra.
Oh, no, I'm talking about this administration. Fast and Furious?
Yeah, Fast and Furious, yeah.
Coming from Arizona, we know all about that. Running guns through the Arizona border, back and forth. And Brian Terry, one of our Border Patrol agents, was murdered with some of the guns that the Obama administration actually supplied to the drug cartel.
I still don't understand what the principle behind that was. What did they hope to?
The principle was to make it. Well, like Obama went down to Mexico last week and said, basically our Second Amendment rights were the reason why all your people were dying because the proliferation of guns made it possible so all these criminals could have them when in fact the administration was supplying them with it just so he could help deteriorate or help lessen our Second Amendment rights. I believe that's my.
And
my
his
take.
defense was, well, it was a program that was started under George Bush. No, it was George Bush had a program that was kind of like it, but he had safeguards built into it. If he didn't, it would have come to light before now. And by the way, if it involved George Bush, isn't that old news?
Oh, well, Carney called Benghazi old news, and Benghazi was in October.
Yeah,
I know. I'm trying to let the other people out there know that's what Jay Carney said about Benghazi when somebody brought it up the other day, that it was old news. October of 2012. It's not old news when you don't address it. This administration never addresses anything. This IRS thing that's happening right now. They just said, well, we only heard about it a month ago. How is it I knew about it 6 months ago or more?
Speaking of IRS, this is from the Washington Post. Dateline, May 12th. This is yesterday, yeah. By Juliet Eilperin. Anyway. And this is actually what I'm about to read has actually evolved since this was written yesterday, or posted yesterday. At various points over the past 2 years, Internal Revenue Service officials targeted nonprofit groups that criticized the government and sought to educate Americans about the U.S. Constitution, according to documents in an audit conducted by the agency's Inspector General. The documents obtained by the Washington Post from a congressional aide with knowledge of the findings showed that on June 29, 2011, IRS staffers held a briefing with senior agency official Lois G. Lerner, in which they described giving special attention to instances where statements in the case file criticize how the country is being run. Lerner, who oversees tax-exempt groups for the agency, raised objections, and the agency revised its criteria a week later. But 6 months later, the IRS applied a new political test to groups that applied for tax-exempt status as social welfare groups, the document says. On January 15, 2012, the agency decided to target political action-type organizations involved in limiting, expanding government, educating on the Constitution and Bill of Rights, social and economic reform movement. That's how it's written. According to the appendix in the IG report, which was requested by the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee and has yet to be released. The new revelations are likely to intensify criticism of the IRS, which has been under fire since agency officials acknowledged that they had deliberately targeted groups with Tea Party or Patriot in their name for heightened security. During an appearance on CNN's State of the Union on Sunday, Senator Susan Collins, Republican of Maine, described the practice.
A rhino.
Yeah, described the practice as absolutely chilling and called on President Obama to condemn the effort. House Oversight and Government Reform Committee Chairman Darrell Issa told NBC's Meet the Press Sunday he's not satisfied with the Obama administration's handling of the controversy. The IG report was leaked by the IRS to try to spin the output, Issa said, and lawmakers now need to go through the full report so they can see what the instituted changes need to be to make this not happen again. The agency did not appear to adopt a more neutral test for social welfare groups, which file for tax-exempt status under Section 501c4 of the tax code, until May 17, 2012, according to the timeline in the Inspector General's report. At that point, the IRS again updated its criteria to focus on organizations with indicators of significant amounts of political campaign intervention, raising questions as to exempt purpose and or excess private benefit. That has now expanded to not only groups with 501c, which are basically tax exempt. They can't have a political stance.
Not for profit.
Not for profit. They can't have a political stance. They can't endorse candidates, and basically it's expanded from them and the groups that teach the Constitution and stuff now to business people, businessmen who are critical of the administration. That was as of this afternoon. It's expanding, and Mitch McConnell was saying there's more to come. And I don't know if he means just regarding this scandal or for more scandals. We'll have to wait and see.
This next article is on the same topic. The CIA, IRS. We're talking alphabet soup here. The internal. This is about Michelle Bachmann. She's a representative congresswoman from Minnesota. She said today that the Internal Revenue Service under the Obama administration is the most feared government agency, and that it has been targeting conservative and Tea Party groups during last year's election because of their politics. I'm not going to read this whole article, but what I'm going to give you is the thrust of what it means. She says Bachmann is a former tax attorney, and she was during the interview hold on, this doesn't make so much sense either. Bachmann, a former tax attorney, told WND in an interview the IRS admission means the credibility of the 2000 election is in doubt. Now, I'm not going to go there, but what she's really saying, the most important thing that she says in this article is that that there was no doubt that this was not a coincidence, that they dumped this story today, a Friday dump day, Bachmann told World Net Daily. This is when they put their negative stories out. She said, but she said that the looming storm cloud called Benghazi is the soft underbelly of the Obama administration and likely will keep Hillary Clinton from fulfilling her dream of occupying the Oval Office. that would make it a logical release. That would make it logical to release an IRS story that, while embarrassing, also could be cubbyholed as another conservative dispute with the White House. She was referring to the ongoing hearings on the administration's handling of the Benghazi attack on the Foreign Service post in Benghazi that killed 4 Americans. But basically, she's just saying that it's just subterfuge. That the real, it's like the magician with the glove on, waving the gloved hand in front of you, and that's the IRS story. When the real story is Benghazi, and they want you to take your attention away from Benghazi.
Well, they do that with more than Benghazi. Like, I've got 2 articles here that kind of tie into that, because they do this to distract you from things that you first of all, you don't hear a lot about, but they want to make sure you don't hear a lot about. Biometric database of all adult Americans hidden in immigration reform. This is from Wired magazine online. This is a real short one. You got to be careful what you support, folks. This whole immigration bill that Marco Rubio and all of them are putting up there is not all it's cracked up to be.
Jeff Flake,
he's our junior senator.
John McCain, Lindsey Graham.
Yeah.
Whenever those names start popping up, your warning lights should be going off.
Pisses me off because Jeff Flake's usually good on stuff, on most stuff.
He's not proven too good on this one.
Nope. It says the immigration reform measure the Senate began debating yesterday would create a national biometric database of virtually every adult in the U.S. in what privacy groups fear could be the first step to a ubiquitous national identification system. Buried in the more than 800 pages of the bipartisan legislation is language mandating the creation of the innocuously named Photo Tool, a massive federal database administered by the Department of Homeland Security and containing names, ages, social security numbers, and photographs of everyone in the country with a driver's license or other state-issued photo ID. Employers would be obliged to look up every new hire in the database to verify that they match their photo. This piece of the Border Security, Economic Opportunity, and Immigration Modernization Act is aimed at curbing employment of undocumented immigrants, but privacy advocates fear the inevitable mission creep, ending with the proof of self being required at polling places to rent a house, buy a gun, open a bank account, acquire credit, board a plane, or even attend a sporting event or log on the internet. Don't we have to do that already except for voting?
Why don't you just implant the chip in us right now and get it over with?
We have to. You have to show proof of who you are to rent a house, to buy a gun, open a bank account, acquire credit, board a plane.
It's all information gathering. It's just data that they're going to be compiling. Information that they have no reason
for that data center in Utah.
It's huge.
I know. Think of it as a government version of Foursquare with Big Brother cataloging every check-in. It starts to change the relationship between the citizen and state. You do have to get permission to do things, said Chris Calabrese, a congressional lobbyist with the American Civil Liberties Union. More fundamentally, it could be the start of keeping a record of all things. That's kind of scary. Might actually have the ACLU agreeing, or find myself agreeing with the ACLU. They get it right sometimes. For now, the legislation allows the database to be used solely for employment purposes, but historically such limitations don't last. The Social Security card, for example, was created to track your government retirement benefits. Now you need it to purchase health care or health insurance. The Social Security number itself, it's pretty ubiquitous in your life, Calabrese said. It's also not supposed to be used as an ID card.
Explain what ubiquitous means.
Ubiquitous means you don't notice it. It just blends into the background.
And it's all over the place.
Like traffic lights is a good example. We know they're there.
Cameras.
Yeah. David Beyer, or Beer, or whatever, B-I-E-R, an analyst with the Competitive Enterprise Institute, agrees with the ACLU's fears. The most worrying aspect is that this creates a principle of permission basically to do certain activities, and it can be used to restrict activities, he said. It's like a national ID system without the card. For the moment, the debate in the Senate Judiciary Committee is focused on the parameters of legalization for unauthorized immigrants, a border fence, and legal immigration in the future. The committee is scheduled to resume debate on the package Tuesday. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that you get distracted from.
Yeah, there's so much going on. I mean, you can only prioritize. I want to get us back to. I was hoping just to stick with a couple topics tonight. Benghazi and the IRS. Do you have something else there?
Another IRS thing.
All right, go ahead.
Not the scandal, but
And then I'll
something's coming
finish. I'll finish with Benghazi because I still have several more articles.
This is from the Americans for Tax Reform. Obamacare. Taxpayers must report personal health ID info to IRS. When Obamacare's individual mandate takes effect in 2014, all Americans who file income tax returns must complete an additional IRS tax form. The new form will require disclosure of a taxpayer's personal identifying health information in order to determine compliance with the Affordable Care Act's individual mandate. As confirmed by IRS testimony to the Tax Writing House Committee on Ways and Means, taxpayers will file their tax returns reporting their health insurance coverage and/or making a payment. So why will the Obama IRS require your personal identifying health information? Simply put, there is no way for the IRS to enforce Obamacare's individual mandate without such an invasive reporting scheme. Every January, health insurance companies across America will send out tax documents to each insured individual. This tax document, a copy of which will be furnished to the IRS, must contain sufficient information for taxpayers to prove that they purchased qualifying health insurance under Obamacare. This new tax information document must at a minimum contain the name and health insurance identification number of the taxpayer, the name and tax identification number of the health insurance company, the number of months the taxpayer was covered by the insurance plan, and whether or not the plan was purchased in one of Obama's Care's exchanges. I get mine through my employer.
Well, I look at the Obamacare as just a kind of like a tree branch that can go in all sorts of different directions. And the thing that pops into my mind is gun rights. You're already starting to see veterans returning home who might have
PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder.
Already being kind of, I've been hearing reports of being denied gun rights because of that, and I can envision a government run amok actually taking your medical records and looking at them and saying, "Oh, you took an you had an antidepressant script, a couple years ago. Boy, do you think you're really qualified to have a gun?"
And then
well don't
sorry.
don't think that that's weird because like I said, I studied the Soviets in the 1980s during the Cold War. I used to do that all the time. They if you went against the government, they would come up with different different reasons for calling you crazy, different things you said, things you did, your habits and so forth, and they'd throw you in the gulag.
Just to finish real quick, this will involve millions of new tax documents landing in mailboxes across America every January, along with the usual raft of W-2s, 1099s, and 1098s. At tax time, the 140 million families who file a tax return will have to get acquainted with a brand new tax filing form. 6 million of these families will end up paying Obamacare's individual mandate, non-compliance tax penalty. I got something on that in a minute. As a service to the public, Americans for Tax Reform has released a projected version of this tax form to help families and tax specialists prepare for this additional filing requirement. Taxpayers may view the projected IRS form at www.obamacaretaxform.com. On the form, lines 3 and 4 show where taxpayers will disclose their personal health ID information. Okay, 6 million of these families will end up paying Obamacare's individual mandate non-compliance tax penalty. We have an this is what really torques me off. We have to come up with a complete overhaul of the system, and this is where he tips his hand on this whole thing. What he's really after.
It's not healthcare.
It's not healthcare. Why do we have to change everything for 6 million people?
It's called control.
And that actually might be a little bit low. I'm thinking more like 10 to 15 million. But out of all the people in this country, that is only like what, 5%, 2.5%.
Ronald Reagan made a speech in the 1950s where he said the first step towards a socialist.
Ronald Reagan.
Ronald Reagan.
You said Ronald McReagan.
maybe that,
Play the tape. Play the tape.
maybe that could be a nice new fast food sandwich. But he said in the 1950s that any socialist / communist totalitarian regime starts with healthcare. That's where they begin.
Yeah, it's all about control. And speaking of which, I recommend getting Glenn Beck's book, Control. I'm in the process of reading it, and it's so far so good.
Now I want to get back to Benghazi, because something interesting happened a couple months ago, and it really stuck out to me. Leon Panetta was testifying before Congress, and he was describing the hours that ensued after the initial attack at Benghazi. And I don't have the minutes in front of me, but the main thrust was he was being questioned by Congress, and he was asking, well, how many times did you meet with the president during the whole 7-hour Benghazi affair? And he stated, well, after the initial attack, 0. He met with him for about half hour during the attack, actually when it was actually occurring. Then after that, he didn't see him, and he was
Because he went to bed.
Well, that's what speculation. The speculation is. So, at first glance, it comes across as, boy, this guy's inept. You know, I mean, what do we got? This lazy ne'er-do-well living in the White House. But if you look at it a little closer, you know, it could be just the opposite. Panetta could have been, given Obama cover. Obama was one of two things. He was an inept, lazy ne'er-do-well, or he was a very hands-on conspirator. He knew exactly what was going on, and that during these hearings, Panetta was giving him cover.
But when he was a professor, some of his colleagues have said that he was lazy, a ne'er-do-well. Who knows? That's still part of it. It's part of everything we don't know about the guy. You know?
For being lazy, he's doing pretty well at dismantling a perfectly good country. I mean, somebody's got to be doing something there. I mean, he can't be totally inept.
Nope.
So the question is, again, is he an inept ne'er-do-well, or does he know exactly what he's doing? And was Panetta just covering for his butt for the future? So that leads to this next article that was written in the New York Post by Michael Goodwin. It's called "Nobody Wake Barack."
Uh-oh.
The Benghazi terrorist attack was a debacle in 3 distinct stages. The fatal mistakes occurred in the first 2: the failure to provide adequate security before the attack and the failure to provide help once it started. Those mistakes were tragic, but the Obama administration's explanations are coherent, though hardly defensible. The mystery always has been the third stage, the aftermath, or more accurately, the cover-up. Even before the bodies of the 4 Americans came home, the White House was eager to tell any story except the real one. Aides twisted and turned to create the false narrative that a protest over an anti-Muslim video was spontaneously hijacked by radicals. But 2 problems quickly emerged. There was no video protest in Benghazi, and the attack, which used heavy weaponry, was well-planned. So why did the White House spin the web of deceit? Don't they know the cover-up is worse than the crime? Finally, we have the answer, thanks to Defense Secretary Leon Panetta. In his reluctant Senate testimony, he provided the missing piece of the puzzle. The commander-in-chief was MIA. The cover-up was created to protect his absence. According to Panetta, President Obama checked in with his military team early on during the attack, then checked out for the rest of the night. The next day, we already knew he blamed the video maker and flew to Las Vegas for a campaign event. Meanwhile, half a world away, Ambassador Chris Stevens and 3 other Americans had been slaughtered by Islamists. Their murders on the 11th anniversary of 9/11 gave the incident extra gravity and led the White House to conceal the facts. An honest chronology would have revealed the president's shocking behavior during the most successful attack against Americans by foreigners since 9/11. Imagine the questions that would have come. What did Barack do through the long, bloody night? Whom did he talk to? When did he learn that Stevens was dead? There is still much we don't know, but Panetta, under persistent Senate probing, revealed that Obama simply wasn't involved. Did he just go to sleep? That question, like other good ones, was asked by Republican Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina. Panetta and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Martin Dempsey, told Graham they didn't sleep, but said they didn't know if Obama did. You would think a presidential conscience would keep him awake and engaged until he knew what had happened in Benghazi. You would be wrong. Instead, the two officials said they had only one 30-minute conversation with Obama. It began around 5 p.m. Washington time, 90 minutes after the first attack started, and they never spoke to him again that night. The president's only instructions, Panetta said, were, do whatever you need to do, though he left the details up to us. The president never asked what military assets could be used, where they were, and when they would get to Benghazi. Secretary of State Hillary Rodham Clinton never spoke to them at all, Panetta said. By the time the meeting with Obama ended, one American was dead. Stevens was missing, and the survivors had retreated to a nearby villa. At 2 a.m. in Benghazi, 8 p.m. in D.C., the villa also came under mortar and gunfire attack in what witnesses called a planned, sophisticated ambush. 2 more Americans died there. After 4 hours later, at dawn in Libya, officials retrieved Stevens' body from a hospital. He had been alive when he was taken there by the Libyans who converged on the burned-out consulate. It's not a consulate. After the first attack, they found him unconscious in an interior room, and a doctor could not revive him. More than 2 hours after that, after 8 p.m. in Libya and 2 a.m. in Washington, the State Department plane left with the last group of survivors and 4 bodies. Those survivors, no one's ever spoken to, by the way. No one's ever interviewed them. Nobody knows what they experienced. It would be nice to know what Obama did during the nearly 11 hours from the start of the first attack until that plane left Libya. But in truth, we know enough to understand the meaning. His detachment during a terrorist attack was a shameful dereliction of duty. Had he been a military officer, he would face charges. If he were George Bush, he would face ridicule and condemnation at least. But this is Barack Obama, the president who went missing during a terrorist attack against America and escapes without a scratch. So again, it takes me back to what I said. You know, is that the man, or is that cover for him?
Now, let me get something straight. The 3 whistleblowers that testified before the House
Hicks,
last week,
who voted for Hillary Clinton, by the way.
right now they were in Tripoli, right? Am I mistaken on that, or were they in Benghazi?
I don't think they were in Benghazi. I think they were in Tripoli.
Because Hicks was number 2 in command behind Ambassador Stevens. Yeah, and you're right. It wasn't a consulate. It's more like a condo.
It was a place where they did their dirty dealings.
Yeah,
Pretty much.
yeah, and this will not. It won't surprise me at all if we find out they were trying to do gun running with Syria. I just everything in me says that's what they were doing.
Okay, these next 2 articles kind of blend together, and again, it's concerning Benghazi again. This is from the Daily Caller. It's White House uses behind-closed-door media briefing for Benghazi damage control. This is was posted 5/10, which would make that, Saturday.
Yeah.
White House spokesman Jay Carney postponed... Friday.
Yeah.
White House spokesman Jay Carney postponed the daily briefing amid bombshell revelations about the administration's role in modifying CIA talking points on the Benghazi attack, and instead held a deep background briefing behind closed doors for selected reporters, according to Politico. Journalists at the meeting were permitted to use information presented by briefers but not quote them directly, Politico reported. The secret session came 1 day after the White House announced a new plan for sharing federal data, and a few hours after ABC corroborated a report by the Weekly Standard showing that the administration officials quickly rewrote an intelligence report to hide the administration's failure to protect the diplomatic site. The attack was launched by jihadis on the 11th, and we know that. So far, White House officials have denied any significant role in rewriting the intelligence. The only edits made by anyone here at the White House were stylistic and non-substantive, Carney claimed. They corrected the description of the building of the facility in Benghazi from consulate to diplomatic facility and the like, he claimed. The off-the-record meeting began around 12:45 and lasted till 1:45. The bottom line is they basically handpicked the media that they wanted to give their propaganda, their data to.
Picking winners and losers again.
Which leads me to this next article, It's called White House Connections to the Mainstream Media Go Deep. And that's. Did you have something?
No.
And that's at the root to this. That's the last article kind of leads into this. Like who are these people that get special access to the president and so forth. It starts out, and I'm going to give you a real quick briefing. Who's all of the nepotism that goes on within the White House and the media. It's not nepotism. What would be the when you
Collusion?
No, when you have sex with somebody in your family. It's
Incest?
incestuous relationship. There we go.
God.
I couldn't think of it real quick. Did you know two MSN and Did you know two MSM and CNN have? This is written really. This is written by a blogger, so it's done in really.
Crayon?
Did you know two MSM and CNN have top CEOs with relatives working in the White House? Both CBS President David Rhodes and ABC President Ben Sherwood have siblings who work at the White House for the National Security, NSC, National Security. What's that stand for? NSC is the national.
It's NSA, it should be.
That works on foreign policy. It's a national security. It's what Condoleezza Rice was. National security. Anyway, also see that's what's so hard about reading this. Everything's done in acronyms and so forth. Also, CNN's Virginia Mosley is married to Clinton's deputy Tom Nides. I'm not even going to finish this article. I'm going to show you the
Jay Carney's wife.
Yeah, I'm getting there.
Okay.
Did you know Jay Carney, who is
press
secretary to the Obama administration, is the husband of ABC reporter Claire Shipman?
Hold on, the point has to be made. He actually finds someone to marry him?
Yeah. Also, CNN President Virginia Mosley is married to Hillary Clinton's Deputy Secretary Tom Nides. CBS President David Rhodes is a brother of top Obama official Ben Rhodes, who changed Benghazi talking points. ABC President Ben Sherwood is a brother of Obama Special Advisor Elizabeth Sherwood. I mean, it goes on and on, and you wonder why. You wonder why you don't always get the full stories, because I don't know if those should be illegal. I don't know. What do you tell me? I don't know. I mean,
well, I don't know if they can do that, but I don't know.
I'm not saying to make them illegal, but you have to raise your eyebrow and just say, okay, so you've got,
make it more public, maybe.
I mean, you've got members of the administration who have very close, either they're married to or brother and sister of big wigs in the media who make decisions as to what is being reported.
If you make it more public, people might stand up. Enough people might stand up. I mean, and make a fuss about it to where they would say, okay, we're backing down from it. I mean, it worked with Van Jones, Yeah. Van Jones was gone after just, 2 weeks? When it was found out his background was...
card-carrying communist.
Exactly.
Which we're going to do a show on one of these days, McCarthy era and so forth.
Oh, yeah.
That's kind of interesting. A lot of things people don't realize about that. So, this next article is entitled, What Benghazi Reveals About Our Nation. And this kind of takes it from the macro and kind of turns it inward toward the micro. It kind of puts the light on our hearts as Americans, what our responsibilities are, and basically what we should do when our government does bad things. And it's, like I said again, it's entitled What Benghazi Reveals About Our Nation. It's written by Frank Meal. It's a little blog called A Daily Interlake. And it's the alternative media. And it starts off with a quote from Shakespeare's Julius Caesar. The fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars, but in ourselves, that we are underlings. And the article starts by saying the ambiguity of Shakespeare's famous tragedy about the end of the Roman Republic and the onset of dictatorship teaches us that no matter how much we yearn for clarity, there is always an element of uncertainty in the fate of nations. Motive is subjective, intention is debatable, facts are elusive. That is where we must begin our discussion of Benghazi, and it is why ultimately Congress must appoint a select committee in order to pin down motives, intentions, and facts. Just like a jury, the select committee must hear all the evidence and draw conclusions about why the full story about the terrorist attack in Benghazi has still not been told to the American people. Someone must be held responsible. It is not enough to just say mistakes were made. And that's what's happening right now. Look at Hillary Clinton. What difference does it make? It makes
No, it's more like, what difference does it make?
Yeah.
It's more like it is.
That's exactly right. Boy. It's just like a jury, the select committee must hear all the evidence and draw conclusions about why the full story about the terrorist attack. Okay, I just read that. It has been plain almost since the beginning that the United States government has been dissembling about what happened on September 11th, 2012, when the U.S. mission in Benghazi was attacked and 4 people, including the ambassador of Libya, were killed. It has also been plain that most of the mainstream media has intentionally chosen to ignore, to downplay, or to actively distort the possibility that the White House lied about Benghazi. But when you get right down to it, the fault for the nation's general ignorance about the Benghazi cover-up does not belong to the media. It belongs to ourselves. And this is where it's really important. If any American doesn't know by now that U.S. Ambassador Susan Rice misled the world when she went on 5 Sunday morning talk shows and claimed that the Benghazi mission was attacked as a result of anger about a YouTube video, then they simply haven't been doing their job as citizens. This information has been readily available to anyone who's wanted it, and it's no one else's responsibility to make sure you are well informed. Blaming the big media outlets only goes so far. The fault is in ourselves, that we are underlings, quote unquote, from the Shakespearean quote. But now even the mainstream media are starting to wake up, perhaps thanks to the congressional hearings this week that featured the riveting testimony of Gregory Hicks, the number 2 man at the embassy in Tripoli. The first cracks have appeared in the wall of indifference that has greeted this story for months. Hicks established once and for all that it was known from the beginning that Islamic terror group Ansar al-Sharia, an affiliate of al-Qaeda, was responsible for the attack, and that there was no demonstration outside the mission which got out of hand. Following up that hearing, ABC News reporter Jonathan Karl revealed that the talking points used by Ambassador Rice had been methodically scrubbed of references to terrorism and Ansar al-Sharia and reduced to a saccharine, misleading, and politically correct version of events that barely resembled what really happened. In the 12 emails Karl obtained, he saw that the State Department spokesperson Victoria Nuland intentionally reshaped the talking points because she was concerned that the truth could be abused by members of Congress to beat up the State Department. Moreover, after one revision took out some of the CIA's original talking points, Nuland said they didn't go far enough and damningly added, "These changes don't resolve all my issues or those of my building's leadership," meaning the State Department. She was protecting her ass and the State Department's ass. Damn
i.e. Hillary.
Damn be, to the brave souls who died there. People make me sick. We don't yet know who she meant by that, but ultimately the leader in the State Department is none other than Secretary of State. You think Hillary Clinton is still sticking with her? What difference does it make? Response to questions being asked about what she knew and when she knew it? The fact that the President and the Secretary of State and the Defense Department and the CIA and the National Security Advisor and the Ambassador to the UN have still not been held accountable for what happened on September 11th, 2012, and for the lies that were told about it later must give us concern that, like Rome in the 1st century BC, we are poised to lose our beloved republic. The words of Thomas Jefferson stand as a warning to us all. Whenever the people are well informed, they can be trusted with their own government. That whenever things get so far wrong as to attract their notice, they may be relied on to set them right. The opposite goes without saying as well. When the people are not well informed, they cannot be relied upon to notice when things go wrong, nor can they set them right, nor ultimately can they be trusted with their own government. Let us hope we have not reached that point. Otherwise, like Rome and Julius Caesar, we might ultimately meet a tragic end. And basically, it goes back to the Bible when he says, I can't save my people for lack of knowledge. Or it's not that I can't save my people.
People perish for lack of knowledge.
People will perish for a lack of knowledge. That's exactly what it is. And I'm sorry, but I I can't help but it's go harkening back to Rome again. It's bread and circus. It's who's on TV tonight, who's what ball game's on, who's winning in the National League, American League, and there's nothing wrong with that. Trust me.
Exactly.
Everybody needs a distraction, and but at not at the expense of knowing really what's going on with your country and the world, because one day it'll be taken away from you.
I mean, like before the show, after we had talked about what we're going to talk about, we were sitting here listening to music, and I was reading an article about how Fox is bringing 24 back. I mean, that's okay, but don't make it the focus of your life,
Yep. And I guess our last article is what hit us today was that I guess our beloved administration is wiretapping the media. And this is from My Way, which is, I think, isn't it My Way? Isn't that AP? No, the
Not
Associated
sure.
Press.
I forgot now.
Well, anyway,
Got it through Drudge, though.
yeah, it got it through Drudge, but it's all Drudge is, by the way, in case people.
It's an aggregator.
He's an aggregator. He just takes he takes news sources and puts them up there. It makes no opinion about them, no warrants nothing. He just throws them up there. And he's gotten a bad rap by a lot of.
I mean,
Go ahead.
it's no different than what the Blaze does.
Yeah.
The Blaze. Well, actually, no, it is.
No
No,
different than the
actually,
Huffington Post.
actually, no, I'm wrong on that. The Blaze writes their own articles.
Yeah, so does Huffington Post, but they also,
Yeah.
aggregate. But anyway, the Justice Department secretly obtained 2 months of telephone records of reporters and editors for the Associated Press in what the news cooperative's top executive called a massive and unprecedented intrusion into how news organizations gather the news. The records obtained by the Justice Department listed outgoing calls for the work and personal phone numbers of individual reporters for general AP office numbers in New York, Washington, Hartford, Connecticut, and for the main number for the AP in the House of Representatives press gallery, according to attorneys for the AP. It was not clear if the records also included incoming calls or the duration of the calls. In all, the government seized the records for more than 20 separate telephone lines assigned to AP and its journalists in April and May of 2012. The exact number of journalists who used the phone lines during that period is unknown, but more than 100 journalists work in the offices where the phone records were targeted on a wide array of stories about government and other matters. In a letter of protest sent to Attorney General Eric Holder, boy, that'll go far, AP President and Chief Executive Officer Gary Pruitt said the government sought and obtained information far beyond anything that could be justified by any specific investigation. He demanded the return of the phone records and destruction of all copies. Okay, whatever, but the damage has been done. He demanded the return of the phone records and destruction of all copies. Big deal, all right? They've already probably used the information long ago.
Well, and who's to say they're going to give back all copies?
Yeah. He says there can be no possible justification for such an overboard collection of the telephone communications of the AP and its reporters. These records potentially reveal communications with confidential sources across all the news gathering activities taken by the AP during a 2-month period. So you kind of get the gist of the situation. But what's happening is the liberals are waking up. They're saying, "Oh boy, he's just not targeting." Conservative groups, the Tea Party, Patriots groups, whatever. He's an equal opportunity rights infringer.
And it's not just the press; it's the left in government too, because some of them are starting to wake up. Some of them are saying, I mean, they're starting to say something's wrong here.
Well, there's only, how much more do you need? I mean, they got on Bush for the Patriot Act. Now, Bush deserved a lot of the criticism he got, but Obama is Bush on steroids, and he's been allowed to take steroids because we have a media that is either been remiss in reporting, lazy, or has been complicit. People like MSNBC, Rachel Maddow, Chris Matthews, and the like, I believe are complicit. I believe they're just I believe they're sycophant, lapdog, Obamaites. I really do.
There are some that try on the cable networks that,
In the spirit of Joseph Goebbels.
yeah, some of them try to do a good job. Even on CNN, some do. I mean, Anderson Cooper tries to do a good job a lot of the time. Wolf Blitzer.
Didn't Bill Maher take him to task the other day over something?
Trying to
Obama?
remember.
Yeah, it was over.
Well, yeah, they had. Yeah, it was that video on YouTube with what's his name, Greg. Not Gutfeld.
I was going to say.
It wasn't Gutfeld. The guy's lib, and he says, "No, something's wrong here." And yeah, Maher was actually the guy took Maher to task a little bit. It wasn't very heated, but the point was made that no, there's something going on here, and Maher had a really hard time defending his stance, which is unusual for him.
Well, if this were a more mainstream, middle of the road Democrat administration, like let's say the Clinton administration, Clinton would get a free pass. But this has gone overboard, and I think you're going to. I think people are beginning to realize it, and it's nice to see that people actually have consciences.
Make no mistake, real quick about Clinton. Clinton did things to protect his legacy. He did things thinking, what's history going to say about me 30 years from now? Whereas Obama, on the other hand, is a pure ideologue, and nothing matters.
That's exactly
nothing
right.
matters but the philosophy and pushing through what he wants.
Yep.
He doesn't care how he looks, because if everything goes through the way he wants to, he'll control it all.
Yeah,
Or his successor will.
And he does use his Saul Alinsky tactics, rules for radicals. He takes his enemies and he isolates them.
Don't get anything wrong. I'm not a friend of Clinton's.
No. But and Obama isolates people. What he does was his political enemies, instead of confronting them and debating their his philosophy against theirs, he doesn't even bother to do that. He destroys them. He takes them and isolates them, marginalizes them, and that's a Soviet tactic. That's an old communist tactic. Sorry, but I'm going to say it. That's what they do. They isolate you. They make you look crazy. They make you look weird.
And folks, you got to educate yourself. You got to educate yourself and not take for granted what you hear from the media, TV, newspapers, or from your own family. I'll give you a good example. We were raised to hate Jack Kennedy. But as we've gotten older, we've done the research, and we find Jack Kennedy had more in common with Ronald Reagan than he ever would have with Barack Obama. And I first found that out from, of all people, Rush Limbaugh.
He was a ditto head.
Yeah, and for all intents and purposes, Jack Kennedy was a conservative.
There's a lot of historical figures that are real. It's really hard to get the true lowdown on them. Joseph McCarthy's another one. He's been so maligned
Yep.
over the decades for what he did, the McCarthy hearings and so forth. Now, I don't agree with his method. He was probably the wrong person to bring a lot of these things to light. But what he did do is he shined the light on communism. There were communists in the government. Alger Hiss was one of them, and it came out only a few years ago.
And to give you an idea also about him is he was friends with the Kennedys. Bobby Kennedy worked with him, was on his team. He was one of the young lawyers that worked with him during the hearings.
But to this day,
Congress.
the campaign that was waged against him was so successful that to this day, merely by calling somebody a communist, you look like the wild-eyed reactionary, and it's almost you should be thrown in jail because you're freaking nuts. And but I'll tell you what, I'll call Obama what I think he is. I really do believe he's a Marxist.
And by the way, it literally ruined Joe McCarthy's life. It killed him.
Yeah, he died. He
didn't.
Hopeless alcoholic.
He didn't live to the end of the decade.
No.
Of the 50s.
No, but much of what he brought forth was true. A lot of people don't realize this? Did you know that Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz were card-carrying communists? Yep. Now, whether or not they understood it is, that's open to debate. But a lot of Hollywood was, because they were unionized.
Well, they still don't understand it.
And they thought, okay, communism, union, same thing. Well, you know what? They didn't start opening their eyes until Stalin started starving his people by the hundreds of millions and then hundreds of millions. not hundreds of millions, but tens of millions, and then lining them up, in ditches and shooting them in the head.
It's like a friend of mine's married to a woman from Russia. Her name is Tatiana. And I say to her, we call her KGB. KGB, in America, you look for party. In Russia, party looks for you.
Well, yeah,
That's about how it is.
And this wiretapping really is reminiscent of the old Soviet KGB. Just get dirt on people, marginalize them, throw them. Do whatever you have to do, destroy them one way or the other.
And I'm going to say it again. Hitler wasn't elected into office.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Should we call it an evening?
Yeah, by the way, just talking about the Joe McCarthy thing, there's a book to read, and the guy's name eludes me, but I've read it. It's called Blacklisted by History. The guy who wrote it set out to prove everything that we have accepted about Joe McCarthy to be true. But when he did the research, he found, no, it ain't true, and ended up writing a book in favor of Joe McCarthy.
And actually, Ann Coulter is a very she's very well versed in Joe McCarthy, and she's written a lot about him as well.
Yeah. And anyway, guys, we're going to be doing something soon. I think maybe this weekend, a 2-hour show
on conspiracy theories. And I used the quote signs with my fingers right here.
We'll let you go. We'll let you know. We're going to post it on the website. We're going to post it on Facebook. If you have not joined our page, it is Saving the Republic on Facebook, and we have to really update
the reason
that bad boy.
Why I do finger quotes when I say conspiracy theories is because so many things. Again, the people who are who don't agree with your message many times like to marginalize you
because they're lazy. They don't want to do the research.
Well,
and the work.
Either that or they have an agenda. That's more my point than anything.
And a lot of the reason why they have the agenda, though, is because they don't want to do the research to find the truth.
And we're not going to talk about 9/11 was an inside job or anything like that.
Oh, I know people who still believe that, though.
We're gonna go on to real provable things.
Yep. Anyway, folks, we will see you here next Monday at 6 o'clock, if not sooner. I'm going to leave you with some Stained.
Maya